Welcome, everybody, and thanks for being with me this next hour. You're listening to Everyday Astrology with C.A. Brooks here on 12radio.com and also simulcasting on my YouTube channel, which has the same name as the show, Everyday Astrology with C.A. Brooks. So thank you so much for being here today. This is January 13th. 2026, and I have a guest today, and that is Mo Abdelbaki. I think he's just a brilliant Vedic astrologer. I always try to make that distinction because Vedic is different than Western astrology. So sometimes when you hear Mo and I comparing notes on something, he'll talk about a planet being in Sag, and I'm talking about it being in Capricorn, because they are about, 21, 22 degrees different between those two systems. But we always seem to come to some agreement about how we're interpreting it or what it means, but it gives you kind of a different view by going there. So he's a Vedic astrologer and an incredible tarot master, not to mention so many other things that Mo knows. And I always call him a Renaissance man because of that, because he just knows so much about so many things. So I'm always glad to have Mo on the show the second week of the month. So we're going to welcome Mo in just a few minutes, and I will make a few announcements. And of course, that's always to check out Mark's Power Peak, especially on a week like this, because we don't really have time to go through every single thing that's in that Power Peak or the details of the week ahead, because I like to, see what's coming out of Mo's mind. So please check Mark's Power Peak, which is a digital online newsletter. You can subscribe for free if you go to 12listen.com and just look for the link, and then you can get it every Saturday night in your email box. So we are going to take a few minutes to look at the cosmic dance for this week, the week of January 12th. And the thing that I'd like to highlight this week is Venus. And the reason is I think there's a really interesting story beginning to unfold this week. And this is kind of a way of, looking at astrology and, like pulling a thread and see where it'll go. And what I'm thinking is this, Venus in many ways, now I know Mo will tell you some other things too, but I consider her kind of the darling of love and romance, attraction and beauty. And she's the gatekeeper of what we value and what we find important. And she's been going through Capricorn. Now, of course, she transits fairly quickly. Like when she's in a sign, it may be 3-4 weeks. So she's one of those planets that moves pretty quickly. So on Saturday, the 17th, she is going to leap. And I say leap because she's going into an air sign. She is going into independent and eccentric and very social Aquarius. But this is where it starts getting interesting. Before she does that, she is going to, on Thursday morning, January 15th, she is going to make what we call a trine, which is a very positive connection to Uranus. Now, Uranus is that wild card, not exactly the bad boy of, our system, but this is the one that likes to break the rules, likes to shatter limitations. So this is the planet of rebellion and revolution. And maybe more importantly, he is the ruler of Aquarius. So she's going to move into Aquarius, but before she does that, she's going to make this really powerful connection to the ruler of Aquarius, to Uranus. Now, interesting, Uranus is also nearing the end of its 7-year transit in Taurus. He's going to end that on April 25th. Now, that's a big deal. That's one of the things we've been talking about for probably at least a year or so, because it's a big deal when a planet that stays in a sign for 7 years changes signs. It's going to happen on April 25th. But here's what's also going on is I kind of follow, Venus, and I'm going, okay, what are you up to? What's going on here? Because, by the way, here's the other thing. When I see Venus and Uranus doing anything together, I know that there is a real vibrancy to the connection. This is that thing where, like, love at first sight or something amazing just comes out of the blue. It's not an ordinary connection when you see the two of those together. Because here again, Uranus is kind of like a lightning rod. And so something's going on between the two of these planets. planets. So even though this is a very harmonizing trine, and I think some really positive things could come from it, I think it could create some aha moments. And even some of those aha moments, though, as I really looked at it and looked at some other things, I thought these might be things like, I mean, it could be a breakup. It doesn't mean that, you meet somebody and, oh my God, it's love at first sight. It could be that all of a sudden you go, you know what? Something's been happening for a long time, whether it's a relationship or it's a relationship that you have with your home or your job or anything in your life, even a life philosophy. And you go, you know what? This has been happening for a long time. And suddenly, this week I kind of understand this doesn't quite fit. This isn't the lifestyle that I wanted, or there's something that I yearn for. I think that has to do with Venus. So remember, though, these planets both are not in air signs yet. Right now, they are in Earth. And so, they're still honoring that kind of energy. And maybe that's why I'm thinking this kind of reckoning or this realization may be slower. And it may be something that you're going, yes, I somehow knew this. I somehow knew this was coming. I just didn't see it quite yet. Because here's the other thing here, or a few other things that I'm looking at when I say this is an unfolding story. The second week of April, Venus is going to square Uranus. So when I look at that, I go, trouble in paradise. Something's not quite right. And that is like, maybe even this week, maybe you do meet somebody, or maybe you do think about like, hey, I want that job. I'm going to apply for it. Or, hey, I'm going to create this in my life. I'm going to take a class. But then there's a little trouble in paradise once we get to April. And by the way, April's just going to be an incredibly dynamic month. You wouldn't believe how many planets are going to be in Aries in April. But then we get to the first week, or we're going along, and we also see that Venus is going. Oh, and by the way, I think I'm wrong. I think when I said the second week of April, I mean February for that square. Then in March, Venus is going to come into another positive connection with Uranus. It's going to be a sextile. So I see her kind of reaching out and kind of stirring some things up with Uranus. Then once we get to April, that's when Venus, which moves much, much faster than Uranus, she's going to catch up to Uranus and Taurus. And she is going to, on April 23rd, she is going to be right there. It's called a conjunction. She is going to be sitting at 29 Taurus, right there with Uranus. Now that could be the start of some big things, truly. That could be a major opening. So there again, the opening, the beginning, the initiation, very likely is going to be around April. Whereas right now, maybe what we're doing is clearing the decks. Maybe we're getting ready for it. Maybe we're preparing by clearing something else out of our life to make room for something new coming in. And also on April 23rd, when she when she comes, to Uranus, she's only going to stay there for a couple hours, and then she's going to jump literally into the next sign. She's going to move into Gemini. And then 2 days later is when Uranus moves to Gemini. So see, I look at those two planets having that little dance and I'm going, something's going on here. So I just want you to know, it's the kind of thing where, you just pay attention. Just pay attention to what's going on for you. Who are you meeting? What are the ideas that you're hearing? What are the books that you're reading? Where's your mind going? Because there could be some exciting things starting to brew. And like I said, this week, I think we're clearing the decks. This week, we're saying, hey, I need some room. Just like I use the example when somebody has a baby, they take that spare bedroom or they take that office or whatever it is and they clear it out and they prepare a nursery. Well, that's what I think we're doing this week.
Hmm. Um, there's almost a feeling of hypocrisy in reading his
Yes.
autobiography,
Yes.
because it's kind of like do as I say, not as I do when you read it. But
Hmm.
it's really quite amazing. He had a book of virtues that he carried around with him, and it's like,
Yes.
the it was made out of ivory, and he would take ink, and he would put a little dot next to the things that he did every day. I tried it for a while, and I thought, oh God, there's much to it. And he was not that uptight. Did you see the Michael Douglas Franklin um, biopic that he did recently?
Uh-uh.
By any chance? It was
Uh-uh.
magnificent, magnificent. It's a series on Franklin, and he plays him in a way that I've never seen portrayed, and he does it with humor, and it's tremendous. I think anyone who is a fan of Benjamin Franklin should watch it because it's the way I always really viewed him.
Well,
Um,
and where did you find it? Where can I see that?
it's on, I don't remember. It was on one of the thousand of streaming things, but it's just called Franklin, I believe.
Okay,
And
I'll check it.
Michael Douglas plays Benjamin Franklin, and it's about Franklin when he's mainly in France, trying to hammer out the end of the war, the Revolutionary War, and
Hmm.
it's absolutely phenomenal. He does a great job because Benjamin Franklin had an incredible sense of humor.
Yes.
He could be a grumpy old jerk, at times, but he was really quite a rascal at times as
Yes.
well.
I would say Henri.
Ornery is quite the term,
Yes.
and he was a ladies' man. That here's the deal. He, I believe, preferred the company of women to men and he had good friends who were men and so on, but women are, I like women, and I don't mean that in the term of lechery,
Hmm.
but there's something really quite remarkable about the way women think, as opposed to the drudgery of men thought. Do you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Um, it sounds terrible. I know. I don't know quite how to put it, but I've been a reader. I've been reading tarot for most of my life. Started when I was about 10 or 11. I got my first deck of cards, and started doing a lot of readings at the age of 20, and been professional at it for, well, about that time, I suppose. And 30, I was really doing it heavy duty, and I'm 71.
Hmm.
So most of my life has been, and 99% of my clientele have been women. And I realized that I get along with women very well. And I've been around a lot of men. I was a Freemason for some time, quite a while, and realized after a while there's a very big difference between the way men and women think. Does that sound terrible?
No, no.
Okay, because if I say something, I'm not trying to get myself into trouble, but quite frankly, um, women make more sense than men. You know, Men have this problem, and it has to do with posturing, and it has to do with having to be right all the time, and it has to do with, and I just think it's silly. I just think, and eventually I got out of that organization because of mainly what I'm talking about. It's like, no, you don't have to be, and other problems. There were a lot of problems. Um, I mean, I caused an international problem in that
No.
organization. Me, little old me, imagine that.
Yes.
but but
I
it's just
can.
yeah. I mean, well, I didn't try, I didn't try, but it's just a remarkable thing. there's something about it. And Franklin was the same way. He
Mm-hmm.
understood that men cause wars. Men want to rule countries with an iron fist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, men have no problem sending their sons into battle. Women think twice about such things. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? I mean,
Yes.
and he was like that. He understood the difference, the gentility, and women could be, just women are. You don't mess with women because they can be ruthless and all of that. But he loved. There's something really remarkable. The intelligence is incredible. And like I said, I know I'm probably getting myself into an immense amount of trouble here, but I get him. I get him. I get him. And his chart is fantastic because I haven't looked at it in a long time. But as I recall, his planets are splayed. They're all
Mm-hmm.
over the chart.
They're
They're
all,
not.
yeah, yep,
Yeah,
they
I
are.
mean, there's only two planets together, as I recall. Everything else is splayed throughout the chart. Am I right about that?
Yep. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah. In fact, when I opened it up, I thought, I mean, and I've looked at it multiple times, but when I looked at it, I thought, oh my God, because there were just so many connections because he
yeah,
does have planets all over. And that's it. Hard, challenging things, easy things, interesting things. And like I said, I think the synchronicity is there. I mean, no wonder I started reading this because he's a Capricorn with Venus
yeah,
in Capricorn and, just so many other things. His Jupiter was in Cancer, which it is right now,
yeah.
so yeah, yeah, he's
He and
got a
I suffered from
very
gout,
interesting. Yes, yes.
and my first gout attack lasted 6 weeks. And there is nothing like gout to bring about a true sense of humility. Um, that's for sure. And I didn't have health insurance, so I couldn't go to the doctor, and you just suffer through it. And he had such intense gout, but he couldn't stay off the wine. He loved the stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
he would have these horrible gout attacks, and he would still eat and drink the things that were not good for him because he liked life.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
loved life.
yeah.
Um, the poor
Maybe that
guy had a
Sat's rising, just like I have to have every experience that I can. And there
yeah.
again,
Oh,
Jupiter in Cancer, just
yeah.
like the nurturing and the, making everything bigger through nurturing, eating and sensual pleasures.
Yeah, and publishing and writing and creating and music, and I mean, this guy was cool. I would have wanted to hang out with him. I don't think he would have tolerated some of the things that I thought and said and so on and so forth. But he's the type of guy. And then his ferocity of politics and but he was always trying to make he was also a Freemason, and one of the things that he tried to do was smooth things over, and I took
All the
that
time.
role. Yeah, he
Yes.
tried to smooth things over in lodge, and so did I, and I found that to be a fruitless thing to do because there are people who are rabble rousers, and it's funny. I mean, I just there, and I'm not saying I'm like him. I'm just saying I like him. You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've always appreciated him. He was a deist. He just said there is something out there. I'm very up in the air about all of that. Very up in
Mm-hmm.
the air. He
Mm-hmm.
got to be good friends with Voltaire, and that's cool. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just he's a fabulous fellow. Fabulous fellow. Um, one of my greatest treasured things was a 50-cent piece that I got when I was a kid because it had his face on it.
Mm-hmm.
The Liberty Bell on the other side, and it would ring when those 50-cent pieces had a lot of silver in them, and they would ring. And I lost it, as
Oh.
life goes on. But c'est la vie. But I'm sorry. I go on and on and on. But
No,
if you
but
read him,
truly.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, like I
he
said,
was
that was
cheap.
actually Yes.
and I'm
Well,
cheap.
frugal.
Oh,
He was frugal. He
I
was
mean,
frugal.
I didn't have any money as a kid. I had to work hard for what I had, and then I would, I pitched in to the family. Um, my dad was a college teacher, a professor, and we didn't have that was not easy. And so whatever I made, I was expected to pitch in. And so my first deck of tarot cards, I got out of the back of a comic book. I
Mhm.
sent in for them. And it was a lot of money to me. It was like 3.95 or $5 or something. I was 10 years old. Didn't get it till I was 11. That was a fortune to me. And so everything I got, it took. I mean, I understand. There's something about this guy that really clicks with me. I really admire him.
Mhm. Well, and there's so many things. I mean, like, I haven't been reading the book very long, so I'm not that far into it. But, and here again, I think the timing of, even though I don't do New Year's resolutions per se, that this guy, he always had a list. Like, for instance, he developed a list very early on, like as a teenager, of 4 qualities that he thought were very important to develop.
Right.
Honesty, frugality, being industrious. I mean, he just
Yeah.
came up, and they were kind of 4 words, but then, with lots of like tentacles going out to what does that really mean, being honest, backing up what you say. Telling
Exactly.
people what you really think, and yet then he moves on to going, you know what? Maybe it's not necessary to tell every single person exactly what you think. Because there
Right.
again, he kind of came into this thing of, I like to talk and I want to tell everybody my opinions. But it wasn't long before he said, but you know what? I do that. I alienate people, I isolate myself. And so I'm going to, and he even says, I'm going to forego the pleasure of telling people what I think so that possibly I can learn something new and I can spend time with them. That's the other thing. I think he was like 18, 19 years old and he developed this club, of I think about 20 other, young men. And they would meet every Friday night and
That's
discuss their
right.
books and discuss how, he was ultimately interested in how to improve himself.
Right.
And so he was always, it sounds like, making these lists of things that he thought were important. And he had this whole list of questions for these guys that they could all discuss,
Right.
and with the idea of helping each other and always, at least, paying attention to it is, and helping the world. How can we help Philadelphia? How can we help
Right.
us? And how can we help ourselves and help our world, because it's all related. So, and the other thing I kind of just chuckle about him is he kind of freely admits, and I'm sure Walter Isaacson, who's the author of the book I'm reading, got a lot of this from his autobiography, but that he says he will pretend to be something even if he's not, because
Exactly.
and it's kind of like he wants to develop humility, but he will pretend to be humble until he gets it.
Yeah.
And there's just something very funny about that, about
Yeah.
saying, yeah, I really want that quality, and that's not me, but I'm going to pretend patience, or I'm going to pretend humility. I'm going to pretend this stuff until I can really figure it out.
Well, one of the things was chastity. It was one
Yeah,
of his virtues was rarely
yeah,
indulge in venery, in
yeah,
venal things except for health or offspring.
yeah.
Well, man, he didn't follow that one very well, especially when he was an old man. But he was able to consider that a matter of health,
Yes,
that
yes.
as an old man you should engage in, but he did so um out with his heart. It wasn't
Hmm.
just about engaging in a sexual relationship because he just wanted to. I mean, he was not a spring chicken, but there was true affection in that. You
Hmm.
know, and
Hmm.
he was a big, big deal in France. He
Yes.
was absolutely revered. He was famous. He was so famous they put him on money, you know?
Hmm.
It's quite frugality. I mean, I made the mistake of reading something about, spend nothing unnecessarily and waste nothing when I was a kid. So I became a hoarder. Um,
Uh-huh.
because and I thought not a hoarder, but I don't believe in getting rid of stuff because you might need it. Now it's come in handy with things like books and so on. But when my wife is just the opposite. She believes in getting rid of it. If you're not using it, why do you have it? And it makes me crazy because she gets rid of stuff and it's stuff that's usable, Goodwill, that's good, but sometimes she'll just toss it. And it makes me nuts because wait a minute, that's not frugality, you know?
Right.
And,
Right.
and and so we're at opposite ends of the spectrum. Temperance, that was one of his 13 um, you know, um, uh,
Virtues.
virtues. And it's like, well, he didn't do that one, not to
Yep.
dullness or excess. In my youth, I certainly didn't follow that in the least, but in my dotage, I absolutely don't I don't do anything that dulls the mind. I don't
Yes.
believe in it.
Well,
Um,
and it's interesting that you said that because see, I think that's how he saw it too.
yeah,
That it was about improving himself. It was about learning something. It was about filling his mind with as many things as he could and having a sharp mind. I think he
right,
measured lots of stuff against will this dull my mind? And if the
right,
answer was yes, then he didn't want to do it. And
right.
in at least when he was young, that definitely included food and drink. Or in some ways, he even said hanging out with the wrong people
Oh,
because
sure.
and by wrong people he just meant people that weren't going to teach him something, weren't going to take him higher,
Exactly.
you know.
Well, it's like my radio show, right? Um,
Uh-huh.
he said, "Speak only when it benefits others." Other words, don't talk. You
Yeah.
know, I asked myself a while ago, why am I doing this show anymore? What is the purpose of it? And I literally thought, is it just to hear myself speak? And I said, no, it's to pass on what I believe is important information. That's
Hmm.
it. It's to benefit others. And that falls right in line with one of his virtues. Otherwise, I
Hmm.
should keep my mouth completely shut. You
Hmm.
know what I
Yes.
mean?
Well, and
You
that's it.
know?
He admitted as much as he liked to talk, he really, and I'm going to use the word played, but he played with silence. That
Yeah.
was something that he just thought a whole lot about and what its purpose was and how you could use it successfully. you
Yeah.
know and there again, what his purpose was. I mean, talk about a Capricorn. Everything
Yeah.
had to have a purpose.
And a place, and that's where I fall
Yeah.
down. They're coming back to me now. Order. I'm no longer. I'm not. Things are not always in their place. They are in my mind, but they're not always where they should be. In that sort of thing. But
Yeah, but
yeah,
as you alluded to, though, one of the things that Walter Isaacson brings out that people said about him is that he had a phenomenal ability to rationalize. And by that, what they meant is, yeah, being frugal worked until you really want something, and then he could come up with a reason why he
right.
had to have that. I mean, he was so intelligent, and so he would go round and round something until he found a reason. He
Yeah,
could justify what it was, which I think is a human quality all around. That's
and he
exactly what we do. It works
and he
until I
really.
want it different, and then I'm going to
That's
change
right.
my mind.
He was very human, very
Yes,
human.
yes,
A- And he was estranged from his son, whom he loved incredibly, but could not
yes,
forgive him
yeah,
for his loyalty to the crown. I mean,
right,
that was a big one. He was
yeah.
a he was a patriotic man and
Hmm.
loved this country, loved it dearly. Um,
And yet, see that too. I mean, that's why I say kind of a contradiction of all things, because they're like, even in his early, like being a teenager and stuff, the things he would kind of give up on with people. And I find myself like people ostracized him because he wouldn't pay into this fund, where he worked the other apprentices. They all had a beer fund, basically. And you had to
Right.
pay so much money, and then they would buy all these pints of beer and they'd drink it all day. Well, see, he didn't want to do that because he thought it dulled his senses. He refused to pay it. But what he found is then he was ostracized from them. So he
Right.
gave in and he paid it. Now I don't know if he drank it, but he paid it. And I found myself even going, "Don't give in to those guys. Why would you do that?" But see, once again, his purpose was to
Right.
be in alignment with them.
But that was
And
politically expedient. And
yes,
that
but
was Franklin, you see.
yes, yes. And so, but when it came to his son, you're right. That crossed the line. That became the issue that he couldn't go there,
Yeah.
you know?
But it was smart. It was the smart thing to do because he needed those people down the line.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
was the politically correct thing to do. And I mean, he eventually became Dr. Franklin. He became
Mhm.
known as one of the wisest men in the country. Um, he was brilliant. I mean, he invented bifocal glasses, you
Oh,
know.
how many
Um,
things did he invent? There
oh
again, just
God.
like a phenomenal mind and
Yeah.
just always, but you know, I love that we're talking about him in this month because once again, like I said, I don't really do the resolutions, but I think in terms of just even simple things like be kind.
Yeah.
Can you,
Oh yeah.
like him, can you just have a motto? And it doesn't mean that you know exactly how to do it. So there again, maybe you pretend until you get it. But can you
Right.
just, that so appeals to me. And here again, I guess it's because of all these Sag risings here. But, yeah, I do want to improve myself. I want to be a better person. And, that's what, when I think about people being depressed, and not saying I'm never depressed, but when I think about, we look at the world and we go, oh my God, going to hell in a handbasket, right? But what pulls me along always is aspiring to something,
You
being
see,
able to aspire to something and not let it all get me down. Let's look to what is hopeful or what's possible, or to some of the people that did it well. Let's put it that way.
with everything that's going on right now, and everything is going on right now, he's
Yes.
one of the reasons I believe. He's
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons that I see hope.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the reasons I never lose hope
Yeah.
because he never lost hope.
Yeah.
And things were pretty dire.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like you had mentioned, I think before we went on the show, something about I've never personally seen it this bad. But you know what? You look at some periods, in our history, that was pretty bad, the Revolutionary War. That was
It
pretty
was
bad.
very
Breaking
bad.
away from England, everything you ever know,
Yeah.
breaking away from and yeah, it was bad.
There were things that were very bad, and it looked
Yeah.
bleak, and it didn't look like it was going to work. And yet, Benjamin Franklin, I don't think he ever lost hope.
Hmm.
I think he always knew that there was a great destiny. My father was his father was a member of Egyptian parliament. He was a
Hmm.
member of the economic something or the other under King Farouk before Nasser deposed the king and all that thing. And my dad was a member of an elite class in Egypt, as my other grandfather was too. But my father so admired this country that he chose to leave that status and come here.
Hmm.
And he did it because he saw Mr. Smith Goes to Washington when he was a kid, right?
Ah,
When he was
yeah.
a young man. He believed so much in this country that he didn't tell my mom he wasn't going back. And he certainly didn't tell the Egyptian government who funded his education in England. He had already my dad was, not bragging because, I didn't do it, but he was valedictorian of everything he ever did. And so they sent him to England, and then they allowed him to come to the US to get his PhD. And so he wrote his own ticket. And then he said, I'm here. I'm not going back. I don't want my children to be raised in a country that is that repressive.
Yeah.
Where sure we are of a certain class, but everyone else is in grinding poverty because that's what it was.
Hmm.
Grinding poverty. He wanted us to be raised in a country like America because he loved this country. And we used to talk about that. He said, this country, you can be anything you want to be. And he said, you want to be a tarot card reader? You want to be a yo-yo man? Do it. That's what you can be. And that's why I believe in this country so much. And that's why I am the way I am. And that's why I'll never give up on my beliefs. And I honestly believe that that is the spirit that flows through things. I will never, ever, ever stop believing. Never. And I think that it's a truth about this nation. I really do. And someone like Franklin was a part of that. And Thomas
Hmm.
Jefferson, who owned slaves, shame on him. And someone like George Washington, who owned slaves, shame on him for doing so. John Adams didn't, but they were all necessary. They were all part of it. And there was something special about the time. And there is something special about this country where millions of immigrants flock to it like magnets to this place. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
There is something magical, and I mean that in the most specific terms about this hunk of land. And there are the indigenous people who are here. They're the only real natives, you know?
Yes, yes. We're
Um,
all
and
immigrants.
and they're all beautiful people. I've known some. They're wonderful. And they've been screwed. Every treaty has been broken. Maybe there's some karma going on right now. Maybe we need to open our eyes and say, there's a lot of healing to come. But I believe that everything is going to be just fine. It just takes
Hmm. Yeah.
time. I
Well,
really do.
Mo, thank you so much for ending the show that way because yeah, that's what it's about. It's about hope. It is about understanding something other than just what's right in front of my eyes sometimes. So thank you so much for being on the show and
I'm
everybody.
sorry I took it there.
Oh, no, 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 no. I'm not sorry at all because, if we just got on the air and said, yeah, everything's good, that would be bullshit. Right? It's not all
Amen.
good, but there's a lot of good out there. There are things to aspire to. There are people who can inspire us or show us another way. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for being one of those people and for being on the show today. But we got to make it quick. Anything you want to announce before we wrap it up?
No, I'll be on the air tomorrow. I'm going to talk about Tarot as a language and how to communicate, how to talk to your deck, and how to have it talk back to you.
Oh,
So
good. That sounds like a great show, especially in
it'll be fun.
January. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Mo. And thanks to all the listeners and everybody who came in the chat room. Sorry, once my computer crashed, I didn't dare open YouTube back up again. So thank you for being there. I mean, I feel your spirit. I feel you out there. And Serena, thank you for being an incredible
Oh,
producer,
you're wonderful.
walking me right back through getting this back on the air. So thank you. And everybody, speaking of being on the air, I'm going to join Kelly Whetstone on empowerment coming up next. So if you just switch over to either 12radio.com or her YouTube channel, that's where you're going to find us. So thank you so much for being here today. This is CA signing out. You can find me for personal sessions on 12listen.com. Please feel free to request a scheduled call at a time that's good for you. You have been listening to Everyday Astrology with my guest Mo Abdelbaki on 12 Radio and on YouTube, where we are changing the way we listen to the world.